Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today, for your weekly top 5 video, we are going over my top 5 hidden gems. These are ships that, sure, they aren't one of the most busted ships in the game at the moment, nor are they considered to be overpowered by any stretch of the imagination, but you know what? They are still some darn good ships, and they're still worth your time to grind them out if they are tech line ships, or they're definitely worth picking them up if they're a premium ship in my humble opinion. So let's go ahead and get right on into it. Before that though, just about under half of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. So fix that by going down below, hitting that subscribe button, and while you're down there, hit the like button and leave a comment as well. Now that you've pleased our YouTube algorithm overlords, let us begin with number 5, which is the Tier 9 Pan-European destroyer, the Velos. So the Velos is pretty cool for a couple of reasons. One, it's a real still historical ship that you can see today if you're ever in the neighborhood of, well, Greece. Two, it is what most premium ships really should be, especially if they are clones of an existing ship already. And I know the Velos is yet another Fletcher clone. We've got, what, 6 of them in the game, 7 of them in the game, with, I believe, our 8th coming around this summer as well. But, hey, look, there were 200-something of the Fletchers made during World War II. And there's a ship that should be, well represented in the game. It's the Fletcher class. But anyway, so the Velos here is a side grade to the Fletcher. It's a version of the Fletcher that you can lean heavily into one of two manners. One, you can build into the main battery guns, because the Velos, believe it or not, despite missing a turret in comparison to the Fletcher, it actually does have more DPM than the Fletcher if you go into the guns full tilt, which means it is very, very good at contesting caps and bullying other destroyers out of the cap with its guns. On top of that, you can also build into the torpedoes, which I wouldn't really recommend doing, but you can do it because even without building to the torpedoes at all, which, keep in mind, the Fuji Punch in the background, I have not built into these torpedoes one bit. I went the gun route because that's what I like about the Fletcher. You can get this single torpedo tube reloading pretty dang fast. Without building into it, I already have a sub 60-second reload on this set of torpedoes. Now, you might be thinking, well, it's a Pan-European Fletcher, so it has the Pan-Euro torpedoes, right? Wrong. It gets the reload, but it maintains the Fletcher torps. So you still get torpedoes that do around 16,000 damage instead of the, marshmallow torpedoes that the Pan-Europeans get. They only do around 11 or 12,000 damage per torpedo, less in a lot of cases. But you maintain that good reload time. However, you only have one tube with the narrow or normal torpedo spread. So, even without building into the torps, I make a lot of use of my torpedo tubes this round, until they get destroyed, that is, but yeah. So you can do, those two things with the Velos. Build into the guns, build into the torpedoes, and have like a really goofy reload on your single torpedo tube, or have, an absolute DPM hose with your main battery guns. The Velos does also have better AA than Fletcher, but not as good of AA as you would expect from a Pan-European ship. So there's that. It does get DFAA and an engine boost and the American smokescreen. So it's a very familiar playstyle in the Pan-European nation. Now, back when the Velos came out, you didn't really have too many Pan-European ships in the game at the moment, but obviously since then we've had a lot more get added to the game. So there's plenty of opportunities now for you to, use the Velos to train up one of your commanders and then, shuffle them off over to another Pan-European ship. That's pretty cool in my humble opinion, and it is just an interesting side grade to the Fletcher. If you want more of a gunboat Fletcher, I would recommend taking the Velos. If you're more to the torpedo sides of things, again, the single torpedo launcher can get down to some ridiculous reload speeds with a proper build, and if you're running Swirsky on them, right, you can get some pretty goofball things happening there. But again, you're putting all your faith into one mount that can get knocked out if a single HE shell hits in the right place, and RNG deems that mount to have 700 HP instead of like the 3000 HP it should have, right? So you could do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. But it's a nice side grade to the Fletcher. If you like the guns on the Fletcher, you should definitely look into picking up the Velos, especially when the price does get dropped, when the prices become standardized across all classes in 14.6. But yeah, definitely a really solid ship, great at cap contesting, which is what I like to do with the Fletcher, which is probably why I do like the Velos so much. But anyway, moving on our way down now to number 4, we have the Tier 6 Premium British Heavy Cruiser, the London. We won't be spending too much time here, as I talked about the London in a video last week. The London is a ship that I didn't have the best of best experiences with during that Tier 6 clan battle season. I was stuck playing her for the entirety of the season, and that was a pretty miserable season. Anyone that was around back then should remember that. But after going back and playing the London in today's World of Warships, I realized, you know what, this is actually a really solid ship. So the London is a British heavy cruiser with 8-inch guns at Tier 6, which is a little ridiculous, honestly, to have guns that large at Tier 6. And they're also surprisingly accurate for a Tier 6 cruiser. And they just gave the London a couple of buffs that counter, definitely helped make her more comfortable to play in today's World of Warships. They gave her another kilometer of range on her main battery guns, and they shaved a second off of her reload time. So now you've got a 14-second reload on these guns with a 14.5 kilometer range on these 8-inch guns at Tier 6. The London as well also has a really small citadel, surprisingly so, especially if you come from, shooting like Minotaurs and stuff at higher tier. You know how massive these citadels on these British cruisers can be, even on the Goliath line as well. The London's is nice and small. So there's a surprising amount of times that you'd expect to lose most of your HP in the London that you actually don't. So that's pretty nice. She gets a heal as well, and a smoke screen, so you can sit in your smoke with your 8-inch guns and just bully things at Tier 6 with the London. You also pick her up right now for the whopping low price of $10 in the Battle Pass, and that is a great deal in my humble opinion for what is a really solid Tier 6 premium at the end of the day. You can burn things down with your HE, you can citadel things to death with your AP. All in all, it's a surprisingly pretty comfortable ship to play at Tier 6, and one that you should definitely look into picking up, especially again right now, considering you can get her for the whopping low price of $10, which is quite the discount on a Tier 6. Tier 6 ships normally go for around 20-ish US dollars today, so there you go. Like I said, quickly we move on down to the number 3 slot, which is occupied by the Tier 6 Japanese battleship, the Mutsu. Now, the Mutsu is a ship that I've always really liked since she's been in my port, which wasn't too long after I wound up downloading the game back in the day. I think I got her in a super container or something like that, years and years ago. I don't even really remember how exactly, but it was in some container. And the Mutsu is definitely an older premium for sure, but she's actually held up really well over the years, all in all. Now, the Mutsu is a Tier 6 Japanese battleship armed with 8 16-inch guns at Tier 6, which are some ridiculously large guns to have at that tier for a battleship, because now you really don't care about armor at all. If you think back to when we were talking about the Colorado beforehand, in like the battleship video I put out last week, we were talking about how, the Colorado is kind of nice because you get 16-inch guns at Tier 7, allows you to overmatch pretty much all the armor you can see when you're top tier. The Mutsu gets those at Tier 6, so you really don't care about armor too much with the Mutsu. Now, there's a caveat there. The shell that the Mutsu uses is a World War I era shell instead of a World War II era shell, so at closer ranges it does have the punch to get through the armor, then you'll find the squishy bits inside of the enemy ship, but at range it doesn't really. Not that with the accuracy on the Mutsu's guns you really be able to hit anything at range, but there's that. But anyway, on top of having the 16-inch guns, the Mutsu also has torpedoes. She has, still to this day, some of the most unique set of torpedoes on a battleship, bar none. Except for, I guess, maybe the hull-mounted torpedo tubes that you find on the British battle cruisers. So you get 4 torpedo tubes that have exactly 1 torpedo per tube, and once you launch them, that single launcher does start to reload with a whopping 20-second reload time, which is faster than the main battery guns reload. It takes about 30 seconds for the main battery guns to reload. The torpedo tubes are 10 seconds faster because why not? On top of this as well, the Mutsu is one of the very few Japanese battleships to actually have viable secondaries. You know, it's up there with the Key and I guess you could say like OG Shikishima back in the day. Shikishima nowadays, the secondaries kind of work, but yeah, the Mutsu joins the rare club of Japanese secondary battleships. She has a ton of secondary guns, as she is, you know, well, I mean, just look at the thing, it's bursting with secondary guns. So at tier 6, with an 8-kilometer secondary range, with a full secondary build, it can make some things happen if you can get within that 8-kilometer secondary gun range. And then you add to the fact you have the 20-second reload on the torpedo tubes. The torpedoes have a 7-kilometer range. It can get pretty funny with the Mutsu pretty quickly. It's a great ship for like tier 6 brawls or tier 6 ranked. In my opinion, it's got me through many a season of both. It's a fun ship as well. And keep in mind, too, you know, tier 6 matchmaking for the most part, ironically, you know, not the match that, you know, I got that was actually a decent match. You know, it was very much a more long-range match. But, you know, tier 6 matchmaking for the most part, the games down there tend to be a lot closer, so you can get into secondary range a lot more often than not in, you know, that tier 6 matchmaking bracket, so that's pretty neat as well. The Mutsu also, if you do get double up to tier 8, hey, guess what? You have 16-inch guns, which is actually larger than what a lot of tier 8 battleships have. So she up tiers decently well, I'd say. I wouldn't say, you know, she's a ship that doesn't care about being up tiered, but hey, at least you got 16-inch guns if you do get double up tiered to tier 8. So a really fun ship and one that I would recommend you pick up, especially if it ever goes on sale or anything like that. Just a ton of fun here with the Mutsu. Alright, going down to number 2. We have the tier 8 premium American battle cruiser, the Constellation. The Constellation is a ship that I have a bit of a roller coaster of a relationship with, meaning that I was very excited when this thing was announced because this is a Lexington class battle cruiser. Now, you might know the Lexington class as the, you know, early World War II era aircraft carriers of the U.S. Navy, but they were originally meant to be battle cruisers. Then they were converted into carriers. So, yeah, this is, you know, a nice what if. This is like what I really like about World of Warships. You can get these what if designs. You know, what if the Lexington class actually was built as a battle cruiser, and what if it was modernized after Pearl Harbor? That's what you get here with the Constellation, which is pretty dang neat in my humble opinion. So that's why it looks, you know, more like the modernized Pearl Harbor ships. Now, it has a whole hell of a lot of stuff bolted to it. You get a radar, you get the torpedoes for some reason, 9-kilometer torpedoes, 10-kilometer radar, which is just wild to have on an American battleship. I believe it is still the only American battleship to have torpedoes in the game at this moment, at the time of recording, right? So that's wild. So when I saw all that, I was like, oh man, this thing looks pretty interesting. Then it came out, and it wasn't the best experience, in my opinion, when she first came out. But, you know, now that we've gotten several other battlecruiser lines in the game, a lot more battlecruiser, you know, type premium ships and larger cruiser premium ships in this thing's matchmaking bracket, there's more stuff for it to have more of a, I guess you could say, fair fight with, you know, other ships that it can overmatch their bow armor with its 16-inch guns now and such, because it does have a 27mm bow, and that, well, that gets you overmatched by quite a bit when you're in that tier 8 to tier 10 matchmaking bracket. Of course, there's more super ships in the game as well, so, you know, the super ships are taking more of those tier 9 and tier 10 ships up into super ship games, so you have a better chance of being, you know, at least top or mid tier in the Constellation. So I think those are things that have definitely helped the Constellation out throughout the years, and nowadays it's, in my opinion, a pretty fun ship to play. The best way to describe it is that it's a stretched out, fast Colorado. Like Colorado, 16-inch guns at tier 7, like we were talking about the Mutsu, they're pretty nice, right? But the ship they're bolted to, not so much. You take those 16-inch guns, put them on this hull, which can go 35 knots, is a hell of a lot more maneuverable than the Colorado, has radar, it has 9-kilometer torpedoes. That makes the Colorado a lot more fun to play, or I should say the Constellation a lot more fun to play than the Colorado. Now, yes, it is a huge ship. It does have a 27 millimeter bow. There's tons of armor for, cruisers and such to bite into. But, I mean, you know what? It's still a fun ship in most cases when I do play it. I have a blast doing so. And again, it's an American battleship with radar and torpedoes and 16-inch guns. There's a lot to like here with the Constellation. It's a great what-if ship, and this is, what I really do like Wargaming doing with paper designs and such. I don't really see too many of them in games anymore, probably because, well, yeah, the guns are nice, the radar's nice, the torpedoes are nice. Like I said, survivability isn't really that great. It is truly a battle cruise. It does trade a lot of that battleship survivability for its speed and maneuverability. So it's, well, pretty well balanced. And, well, when something's balanced and not broken, of course, players don't, want to play those ships. Everyone wants to play an OP ship until it's time to play against an OP ship, But, yeah, that's getting to a different topic for a different day. But, yeah, Constellation, ball of fun, love it. All right, going our way down now to number 1. We have, in my opinion, one of the most underrated, one of the most underplayed ships in the game, and that is the Tier 10 Spanish tech line cruiser, the Castilla. I still, to this day, do not know why these ships are not played more. The Castilla line is a fantastic line of cruisers. I guess because they're not outright busted, that may be why. Even like when they came out, they really weren't played that much, which was a big disappointment for me because we'd been waiting for Spanish ships to come to the game for it felt like forever. The Spanish had a pretty sizable navy during World War II and such. You could easily make a Spanish destroyer line and have 80% of the line easily be real still historical ships too. So that's another thing we were excited for. We see the Spanish cruisers come. It's like, okay, so the Spanish destroyers shouldn't be too far behind. But here we are, and no Spanish destroyers just yet outside of the that one premium one. But anyway, so the Castilla. The Castilla is, as you can see, it looks like a Napoli, right? Yeah, because that's what the Spanish did. They looked to the Italian Navy more than a few times when developing their own navy. They were even, I believe, looking at licensing or contracting a Littorio-class battleship from the Italians, too. So it makes perfect sense that if the Napoli ever came to be, that they would, do the same thing with the Napoli, and then, boom, we get a Castilla. So, yeah, it is, basically a Napoli, but geared way differently. The Castilla is more about those wonderful, wonderful main battery guns. And as you can see, she does have the burst fire mechanic. Not a reload booster with a limited amount of charges. The burst fire mechanic where you hit F and you get 2 quick shots back to back. And that is a fantastic ability to have. What's really cool too is that unlike a lot of other ships that have that burst fire mechanic, besides like the Johnston, the reload time on the Castilla afterwards, and the rest of the Spanish ships too, is not really that bad. So it actually encourages you to use it a lot more, which is great for ambushing enemy ships or taking advantage of enemy ships that aren't paying attention to you. You catch them broadside, you hit them with 2 quick rounds of that AP, and they are going to quickly regret their decisions. It's a great tool to have. On top of that as well, the ship is also pretty nimble. You get torpedoes as well and hydroacoustic search. So you've got a really solid ship here for close range ambush AP centered gameplay. But it's also quite good at spamming HE because again, with the quick 2-round burst, let's say you spam HE at someone normally, set someone fire, right? They use their damage con. Well, you hit F, get 2 salvos heading toward that ship, and their damage con's off cooldown now, so you're probably with, those 2 salvos, those 18 shells impacting that ship, you're probably going to set a fire or 2, and, well, now there's nothing they can do about it because they pop their damage con. Great way to farm damage there, yet it's rarely played. You really don't see it too much. I'm not saying you don't see it at all. Every now and then I'll see one pop up in Matchmaker and be like, oh, thank God, someone is actually playing the Spanish cruiser line. But at least here over in North America, it's not really played that much, which is really sad. It bums me out quite a bit because the line is really, really good. So, yeah, take the ship into battle, grind up the line. It is 100% worth it, in my humble opinion. The Spanish cruiser line, I mean, I guess, again, because there's nothing too crazy about them, although, you would think the burst fire mechanic would be a pretty big draw to them, but I guess not. But yeah, it's just a weird thing that they're not played much more over here in the North American server. at least. But yeah, I highly recommend grinding up the line to the Castilla. It's a ton of fun in random battles. It's so satisfying when you catch that cruiser that, maybe they slipped out of their smoke or they're peeking around the corner, and you just hit them with that 2-tap with the AP. Oh my god, it's such a satisfying feeling for sure. So again, highly recommended. Highly recommend you guys get the Castilla. So guys, those are my top 5 hidden gems. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What are your top 5 hidden gems? Share them with us down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.